My name's Isabel. It's the end of July. I read some books. When I say that quarantine has left me with nothing to do but reading, I mean it. In July, I finished a total of 22 books and am still in the process of completing one more book. And since there's a lot of them, I'm gonna divide them into certain categories. And those categories are physical books, NetGalley arcs, and library books that I read on the Libby app. So here's the physical section, aka the easiest section because I don't have to edit in covers. You're welcome editing me. So the first book I read of the month was My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. It follows two sisters, one of which has a tendency to kill her boyfriends. And I think that it is a really interesting examination of familial loyalty and how far you're willing to go to help and protect the people you love. It was fast-paced, it was funny, I gave it 4 stars. Next up is what is possibly a new favorite of the year, The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I don't know if you can tell, but the cover of this has like these little tentacles when you shift, and I adore that. The story follows the boroughs of New York becoming personified into people. Typically, I'm not a fan of urban fantasy. It just doesn't hit for me most of the time. But this book proved me so wrong, and I'm so glad that it did. Loved N.K. Jemisin's high fantasies in The 100,000 Kingdoms and The Broken Earth. I shouldn't be shocked that I ended up loving this as much as I did. It reminds me a lot of one of my favorite Dungeons and Dragons shows, Dimension 20, specifically the Unsleeping City season. There's a lot of similarities in the New York being more than meets the eye, expansive cast of characters, all uniting to save the city that they love. I feel like if I talk any more about this book, this video will be too damn long, so I will cut it off here for now. Safe to say that I gave this baby 5 stars. I also read Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This one is an adult military fantasy, which, similar to urban fantasy, I usually end up not being drawn to, but once again was proven so wrong by this book. It follows a boy named Tao and his journey towards revenge. The world building is just so complex and interesting, from the way the magic works to the caste system that they have socially. Also, I can't believe it took me this long to say it, but dragons. Just absolutely phenomenal. I give it 5 stars. And then I reread The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White. This is the Owl Crate cover. I reread this to prepare for the release of the sequel, The Camelot Betrayal, and this was just so fun to revisit the world. Also, I realized that this rendition of Arthur is truly a himbo. 4-star reread. And then I read Witchy by Ariel Reese. It's a graphic novel about a fantasy world where the length of your hair is reflective of how much power you have. If you have a lot of hair, you're conscripted into the army, but if you have too much hair, you're deemed an enemy of the state. The art style was gorgeous, the world was so fun. I'll definitely be revisiting this series at one point again. So the next section of this are the NetGalley arcs that I read, starting with The Mall by Mccafferty. I participated in a tour with Wednesday Books and St. Martin's Press, so I was given an e-arc in exchange for an honest review. This book is about a girl who spends her days at a mall, and it's also set in the 80s, which was a really big draw for me. As much as I loved all the 80s references in terms of music, in terms of fashion, it just fell flat for me in terms of the plot and the characters. I just could not enjoy it as much as I would have. So I gave it 2 stars. I read Fangs by Sarah Anderson. My best friend on Bookstagram, Naomi, recommended me to check it out on NetGalley, so I did. It's a graphic novel that follows the relationship between a vampire and a werewolf. It's very slice of life. The art style is so cute, and the sheer amount of puns in this was so phenomenal. I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I read A Neon Darkness by Lauren Shippen. It follows the characters of Lauren Shippen's podcast, which is The Bright Sessions. This book in particular I requested because it follows Damien, who is one of my favorite characters. He's super morally gray, and his character is so fascinating to me in the podcast. And so this is supposed to be his prologue to show us why he is the way that he is in the podcast. However, it just did not feel the same to me. As much as I really, really wanted to love this, the character of Damien just felt so coercive and manipulative. I didn't really like that as much. so I gave it 2 stars. Next up, I read The Friend Scheme by Cale Dietrich. This one is about Matt, who is the son of a mob boss in town who ends up making a new friend, and that friend turns out to be the son of the rival mob boss. I love a good mob AU as much as the next girl, and this was just so fun. I love how you see a relationship blossom out of a friendship. That being said, it felt very, very melodramatic at a lot of points. 3 stars. Next, I read Last Tang Standing by Lauren Ho. Putnam reached out to me for a review in exchange for an e-arc. Upon looking further into it, the book was pitched as a cross between Bridget Jones's Diary and Crazy Rich Asians, and I don't think I've read a book that fulfilled its pitch so accurately as this one. We follow Andrea Tang in her navigating her life as a lawyer in Singapore, her interactions with friends, love interests, everything in between. Loved it. The last of the e-arcs I read was a graphic novel, and it was Beast Boy by Cammy Garcia and illustrated by Gabriel Piccolo. DC gave me an e-arc in exchange for a full review, which will be going onto my Instagram at some point. I was super excited when this opportunity came up because I was a big Teen Titans girl growing up. I followed Gabriel Piccolo's Teen Titans fan art for like the longest time, so it's really cool seeing him illustrate whole books. I love that they also talk about male body image in this, which is something you don't really see a lot in YA, and I feel like that could really help a lot of people. And so for the last category, we have the library books that I read on my Kindle. Also, I recently got a Kindle. I've been wanting one for a while to read library books and e-arcs to make it easier on my eyes. Plus, I recently saw a video by Tiana T talking about how she loved her Kindle and how it was a game changer. So now the library books. I read Docile by K.M. Spera. It's a dystopian where in order to pay off their debts, people sign up for lives of servitude. The tagline of this book was "There is no consent under capitalism," so I was really intrigued by that. However, the execution wasn't 100% to what I thought it was going to be, and it kind of just left me uncomfortable, but not in a good way. So I gave it 1.5 stars. Then I read Take a Hint, Dani Brown. Let me tell you right off the bat, that was 5 stars. I personally am a ride or die when it comes to the enemies to lovers trope, but this book specifically convinced me that friends to lovers does deserve rights. I consider myself a pretty career-oriented person, so I love Dani's personality, and Zephyr is also a king, so just a power couple in general. I loved it. Because I was still riding on the high from Dani Brown, I wanted to take a stab at another friends to lovers romance. So I read 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. I read The Hating Game last month, loved it, and so I was really excited for this one. This one follows 2 childhood friends reuniting to renovate an old house. It was kind of disappointing. I feel like if I hadn't read The Hating Game or Dani Brown, I would have loved it, but it got a 3 stars for me. Then I read Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. It's a collection of short essays by comedian Jenny Slate. She writes a lot about love, loneliness, identity, all in a very poetic way, but with the same touch of vulnerability that she has in her comedy. If you've ever read Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory, it has a very similar tone to that. Then I read The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. It's a book written in verse about a young boy named Michael who grows up in London and learns more about himself and his identity as he is mixed race, he is gay, and also in college he learns a lot more about drag. This book has gotten all the hype on the book internet for a while, and so I wanted to try my hand at it, and it was so good. I love learning more about drag in media. I highly recommend the documentary Paris is Burning. I highly recommend the FX series Pose. Those are some really good POC-led stories about drag culture and ball culture. And this one gets 5 stars. Then I read Final Girls by Riley Sager. I wanted to try a thriller, and I thought that the best place to start would be with Riley Sager, since he's such an esteemed author in that specific genre. However, looking back, I feel like I should have tried another book by him and not Final Girls. I really enjoyed the plot, I really enjoyed the twists. However, I just did not give a single fuck about the characters. It really decreased my enjoyment of the book. I just wasn't as invested as I thought I could be. I gave it 3 stars. Would definitely try another Riley Sager book. I'm thinking maybe Home Before Dark, since that one has gotten a lot of praise. Then I read The Perfect Escape by Suzanne Park. This is a Own Voices YA contemporary about 2 teens who work at an escape room who sign up for a zombie survivalist competition. Overall, it was fun, it was quick, it made me miss going to escape rooms. Then I read Fleabag: The Scriptures by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. This is the script to the TV show Fleabag. This is one of my all-time favorite shows. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who wrote, created, and starred in this show, is one of my favorite women in the industry right now. She wrote for Killing Eve. I believe she's also writing for the next Bond movie. Reading the script was just so fun, and getting to revisit the series that broke my heart into a million pieces, so I gave it 5 stars. And then next I read Minor Feelings, An Asian American Reckoning by Kathy Park Hong. This is a collection of essays. It discusses a lot of really different topics. I like how it deconstructs just how harmful the model minority myth can be for Asian Americans, while also acknowledging the privilege that Asian Americans do have over other POC. As someone who considers themselves a creative, I found her essays about being an Asian person in the arts and in entertainment really, really fascinating. I didn't rate this because I don't like rating memoirs and rating nonfiction, but I really enjoyed it and found it very insightful. And then I read The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I read this for the Unfriendly Black Hotties book club. Adult contemporary is pretty hit or miss for me, so I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it at the beginning, but as soon as they started expanding upon the intergenerational aspect of this book, I found myself really, really enjoying it. The story is about 2 sisters who leave their small town and both follow very different paths in life. And I found it a really good example of what white passing privilege can look like and what it means to be white passing. I recently learned that it's gonna be a movie, and I'm really interested to see how that's gonna play out. I gave it 4 stars. And lastly, I'm currently in the middle of The Damned by Renee Audier. It's a sequel to The Beautiful, and it is a YA fantasy about vampires in New Orleans. I'm still really early into it, but I feel like I'm gonna finish by the end of this month, and I'm really enjoying it so far. The beginning has the same energy as that one TikTok where it's like the I look pretty good for a dead bitch. So those are all the books that I read in July. As for August, I don't have a set TBR, but some books that I really am excited for: Bearer by Jordan E. Fueco, Each of Us a Desert by Marco Shiro, rereading Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angelis, also The Faithless Hawk by Margaret Owen. So that's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully by next week I finish editing my reading journal, making a video showing you guys what my spread looks like. But until next time, bye.